Good morning, gentlemen. I'm going to talk to you about the American foreign policy now. ये एक बहुत important point है because you know that America has totally changed its colors after Donald Trump has come into town. As you know, in cowboy movies, there is someone who maintains the law in a town, and he's called the sheriff. There were some very famous sheriffs in American history, like Wyatt Earp. He was one of those. You must have read about him. Well, I have. Was a great fighter. And now we have a similar sheriff in the world, and he's Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump is nobody's friend. Let's be very frank about it. अगर वो कहे आप कहें कि वो इंडिया का दोस्त है या रशिया का दोस्त है या इंग्लैंड का है, इट्स नॉट करेक्ट. ही इज अ फ्रेंड ऑफ नोबडी and he's a friend of America only and his own personal glory. That's another thing. He wants his own personal glory and his own personal stamp in the world as perhaps the greatest American president after Abraham Lincoln. So, if you study his foreign policy, now he has revolutionized American thought. Now, as you all know, he was the man who negotiated the retreat or the withdrawal from Afghanistan. In 2020, he lost the election and Biden came, and Biden was having no comprehension of what had happened in Afghanistan, and he ordered a retreat, which turned out to be very chaotic. And America had to cut a very sorry figure in the world. After that, Biden thought he will retrieve himself by a battle in Afghanistan, in Ukraine, and he lost there also. These are the facts of history. We can't ignore it. Now we come to the next aspect of the case. Donald Trump again won the election in 24, and he had made some promises. He had said he will cut down the tax burden of the common American man, as well as give respite to the big industries in America, the billionaires, so that they could invest more money in the American system. That is a system. The persons who will invest money in the American system are the billionaires there. And if you have give them more money, they'll be able to invest. But if you keep having tax, they won't be able to do it. So his profits to cut these taxes could only be in one way, if he could change this equation in the world. Because America was having a big balance of payment problem with almost every country in the world, whether it's India or China or Western Europe, and he wanted to stop that. So the first thing he's done is the tariffs. Now, tariffs are taxes which home country applies on the foreign goods which come. And he targeted India, China, and Western Europe, this including Canada and Mexico. And straight away put 25% tariff on Canadian goods, including Mexico. Mexico's fallen in line, so has Canada. It's making a lot hue and cry. I don't think the Canadians have got any spunk to face up to Donald Trump. India was having 100% duty on American goods, and I think there is going to be a substantial reduction, and Donald Trump has already announced victory. So the tariffs are perhaps, I can't say I'm sure, are going to help America, because once the tariffs are down, the American goods be able to be sold in the countries in Western Europe where there's a lot of trade embargo on America, and including China. See, because with China, America's got a deficit of $400 billion, and how the Americans are going to cover that is not so easy. But let's hope something is done, and Donald Trump is on the right track for America. It's the first time in the history of America that an American president has come, and he has come with the idea कि मैं tariffs खत्म करूंगा. That is, I will stop the tariffs which were being applied with the other countries on American goods. And the threat is, I will do the same thing to you. And this threat, I think, is working. And now he's also had a sea change in foreign policy. Now, India was not getting the latest weaponry from America for a long time. But once Trump has come, he has offered the F-35 to India. Now, that is the best fighter in the world, and if the Indian Air Force can get it and start using it, irrespective of the fact that you don't manufacture the plane in India, but it can be a game changer in any battle with Pakistan and China. Because the Chinese also have no such plane with them, despite this much touted sixth generation fighter, which is actually a big zero. And the fifth generation fighter, which they've already produced, doesn't match the F-35. And the big point which I'm coming to is that there is something called the F-47. As an airman, I can tell you that that is the best plane which is going to come. And it is going to be the sixth generation American plane, and I understand it will be given to India. So the first thing Donald Trump has done is to repair the Indian damage which had been done by Joe Biden. Biden had done so many things against India. He was supporting the deep state in India, the Congress party, and making all sorts of devious plans to try and remove Modi. And that's a fact. It does look a little silly, but that is a fact. I think that thing has gone, the deep state led by George Soros, that industrial, he's run away. I God knows where is he. And he's also probably changing colors. And the deep state was not happy that India should have influence in Bangladesh, and they overthrew the government there. Probably if Donald Trump was there, it wouldn't happen. Now I think that things are stabilizing in Bangladesh thanks to the American effort, and maybe Sheikh Hasina could make an appearance back. Now the bigger thing which is coming up is the American policy on Afghanistan. There was an American who had been in the custody of the Afghans for almost 2 years. He has been released. And I think, and I have information from one of my friends in Washington, that America is likely to reopen its embassy in Afghanistan. Now, this is a very important strategic move, and it's going to cut two ways. Number one, it's going to harm Pakistan greatly, and it's going to be a source of great worry to Iran. Iran is going to be hemmed in. Saudi Arabia is an ally of the Americans, so is the UAE, and now they have an embassy in Afghanistan. The Taliban are hungry for international recognition for what they are doing in Afghanistan. And if Donald Trump sets open an embassy there, it's going to be an ace for the Americans. And of course, it's going to be a very unhappy time for the Pakistani, who, as it is facing a secessionist movement in the northwest frontier as well as Balochistan. And India, as you know, is getting closer to the Taliban, and a full-scale war between Afghanistan and Pakistan is very much on the cards. And that would be, if America is sitting there in Afghanistan, it will be the death knell of America. Probably, I think Donald Trump may have already decided that he's had enough of Pakistan, and it's best that the state is carved into 2 or 3 provinces. And Balochistan, I think, is ripe for plucking. And America, under Donald Trump, he's got a tremendous think tank in the FBI and the CIA. I think they must have already given him the feedback that Balochistan is a country that's going to break away. And if we support Balochistan, it will be an American ally for the next 40 or 50 years. And why it is significant, why they will be an ally of America, because the constitution which has been framed by the BLA for Afghanistan is a secular constitution, something which is unheard of in the Muslim world except in Turkey, where Kemal Atatürk put secularism in the constitution. Now, that is the change of policy. Now, Donald Trump has realized that Western Europe is a drag on his feet, on the American feet, because America is spending billions of dollars in Western Europe and they're getting practically nothing in return other than the fact that they're always opposing the American policy at all stages. They were not acting as lackeys of America, and people like Keith Starmer, the British Prime Minister, and Macron, French president, thinking they're very big people, a lot of big, we got a lot of power, and we'll do what we feel like. So they're opposing they're opposing Israel at so many places, and they were the ones who were instrumental to get a warrant of arrest being issued against Netanyahu. It was a very silly thing. America condemned it. So did China, Russia, and it was something very stupid. So let's be very frank that it's a new whiff of policy which has come in, and Donald Trump has ramped up the pressure on the Western world, these countries, and frankly, they are bewildered. They don't know what the hell is happening. Earlier, they were making big noises, and how they were making those noises because they were sitting on the back of the American horse and riding, and the American horse was had become a mule to help these people. It's not going to happen now, and they have to look after their own defense, and the American taxpayer is not going to pay for NATO. And I think by and large, NATO is a dead organization. If America doesn't support NATO, already Elon Musk, who's one of the big advisors of the American government, has said that we should get rid of NATO. That is, the USA should leave NATO. And I have a feeling it's going to happen. Just watch it. It's going to happen. And now we come to the two things which Donald Trump is doing, and that is the battle in the Middle East against Hamas and Ukraine. Donald Trump has repeatedly said that if he were the president of the United States, there would never be a war in Ukraine. He has repeatedly said that the fault for the war was with Ukraine. I have made so many videos on them, I will not repeat it here as how the war really started in Ukraine, but it was something which was planned by the Democrats, and Biden and Obama, and they had a very nefarious and devious plan, but that's been nullified by Donald Trump. There's going to be a ceasefire in Ukraine, and I think Zelensky's days are numbered. I think he will be very soon thrown out of that Ukraine. Americans don't want him, neither the Russians. The only people who want him are the British Prime Minister and the French President. And Germany has realized, besides the bread is buttered, and so has Italy, I don't think they're going to sit and oppose the American plans in Ukraine. So Donald Trump has taken, hard decisions. That is what a great leader is. You bite the bullet, and he's bitten it. And he realized that the monolith alliance between Russia and China should be broken. That is part of his strategic policy. A man who understands strategy will understand that a monolith alliance between Russia and China is something which America could not face. Now what he's done is he's on the way to break that alliance. The Russians were driven to the arm of the Chinese by the Obama administration and others by enticing Ukraine and getting the battle in Ukraine going. But now that Russia has smashed the Ukrainians, taken 22% of the territory, and incorporated Crimea as part of Russia, I think the peace is going to come. There's going to be an initial ceasefire which Donald Trump has negotiated. And the best part of it, that the French president and the British prime minister have to sit outside the door. Come on, you sit on the bench there. You can't be part of it because you're not a power yourself. And he made a very telling comment to the British prime minister once when they were in a meeting lately when it came. He said, in a jocular way, would the British be able to fight the Russians on their own? Well, you know the answer, and so will I. Britain, benefit of its colony, is a zero in the world. Absolute zero. They got an army of 80,000, and I don't think that army, despite The British Prime Minister with a big smile saying that he will put boots on the ground in Ukraine. What boots he's going to put on around 80,000 soldiers? 20,000 soldiers die, I think Britain will be finished. And Britain should worry more about the resurgence of Islamic nationalism inside Britain. They are the ones who are going to create the problem for Great Britain. That great is no longer there, Great Britain now. And I wouldn't be surprised if Scotland at some stages breaks away from Britain and England is left with England. England perhaps may have Wales with them. So, gentlemen, there is a lot of policies going on in the mind of Donald Trump. He's decided to cut Europe to size, number one. He feels Europe is not that important factor in the world. Number two, he wants peace in Ukraine and it's going to agree mostly to the Russian terms. And the cake, I would say the icing on the cake is going to be that Russia is very favorably inclined towards Donald Trump. And Putin wants also to have peace, and Donald Trump wants peace in Ukraine. So there will be a ceasefire on basically on the Russian terms, and the quid pro quo I think would be Russia will stop backing Iran, number one. Number two, Russia will probably loosen its ties with China once the sanctions on Russia are lifted. You know, the Chinese are worried about peace in Ukraine because if that happens and Russia is, all the sanctions are lifted from Russia, where will China go then? It's going to be all alone because the countries around China, that is right from say South Korea and Japan and the Philippines and India, China has spoiled its relations with all of them except Pakistan. And Pakistan is big zero as far as the power politics is concerned. The army is riding short there, and General Munir is strutting around with all his medals here and there, But I just want to ask you, the Pakistanis and those commentators who are supporting Pakistan, what exactly has the Pakistan army achieved in almost 60 years of military rule? If somebody can tell me, ye achievement thi, they did this thing, they improved the economy, they did this thing, that thing, they did nothing. In fact, they dragged Pakistan to obscurantism. There was a man called General Zia-ul Haq, who actually is the Aurangzeb of the Pakistan government, and that man did something so silly, reduced women to second-class citizens. He did everything that is possible, to finish Pakistan. Anyway, America under Donald Trump has realized it, and let's see what's going to happen further. Now we are coming down to the Middle East, and here there are no holds barred. Donald Trump has realized that the Islamists are probably the source of the problem in the world. The extremists in Islam, they're good people in Islam, definitely. And they have pragmatic leaders like Saudi Arabia's Prime Minister and the UAE President, the wonderful people. But 43 countries ban is being enforced. Travel ban will be enforced by Donald Trump, and most of those countries are Muslim. Now the question is, Islam is a very peaceful religion. I've read a lot about it. But the interpretation given by the mullahs has really changed the color of this particular aspect of Islam. Now coming down to the Middle East battle, Hamas is in serious problem. It is about time that the Indian government realized that Hamas is a terrorist organization and bans it. They haven't done it yet. I couldn't understand why. America, the world, Hamas is listed as a terrorist organization in Europe as well as America, and they are on their last eggs. The other people are the Houthis in Yemen, who is facing a massive bombardment from the Americans, and I think that is going to be the end of the Houthis as well. All this is built up, this peace in Ukraine is going to have its effect in the Middle East, that is in Iran. America has probably decided that Iran will not have the nuclear weapons. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some stage the Iranians, once the peace is announced, uh, accelerate their efforts to have a nuclear bomb. But before that, I think the United States and Israel is going to act. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. And now America has realized that the one country which is going to try to topple them from their apex position is China. And they would like China to be contained. And the best way he's gone about it, if you remember last time when he was the president, he had two meetings with President Kim of North Korea. And during the time he was the president, the North Koreans did not test any nuclear weapons. But once he went away, Biden was putting in all sorts of screws on the advice of Obama, and the net result was that he's been ramping up his weaponry, that is Kim in North Korea. So, gentlemen, there is a sea change in global policy of America. And if you go through the thread, it's very similar. He wants to restore the apex position of America in the world, which was there in the 40s, 30s, and 50s. And despite at that time, when the USSR was really second always to the Americans, and they had to eat the humble pie in Cuba. If they were all that strong, they would have fought in Cuba. But Khrushchev, at that time, the first secretary of the Soviet Communist Party, realized that they would not be able to tackle America, and so he took the decision to lift the missiles from Cuba. And as the saying goes, he blinked. He blinked when he was facing Kennedy. So the whole situation is now changing. America's got a different policy. The only place where I think America's going low key is in Africa. I don't know why. But at the same time, they have gone after the South Africans with hammer and tongs. This South African ambassador was expelled from Washington. And it's about time South Africa realized that you can't have the cake and eat it too. There should be no discrimination against any facet of South African life. You can't write with the whites who did a lot of good work in Africa, South Africa, and now you want to take away their lands. You want to take away everything that they have and give it to the blacks, who in any case are pretty useless as far as work is concerned. They don't want to do any work. I once went to South Africa and I saw what the hell is happening. Lawless bloody place. Difficult to walk at night in Johannesburg without getting pucked. I mean, if this is the type of society which the South Africans want, I think with time the Americans put the screws on them. And America, of course, South America is one of the priorities. I don't know what they're going to do with only one country who's against them at the moment is Cuba. And of course, Bolivia. We'll have to see what happens. And in any case, the American backyard, and they're not that worried because China has got no raison d'etre or anything there to make a presence. They tried in Panama, but I think they're out of Panama now, and it will not be long before Panama is the next canal is taken over by the Americans. Donald Trump has also gone and claimed Greenland as an American territory, and we'll have to see how he goes about it, because he's got only 4 years to put his policies into effect. He had said he'll make Canada the 51st province of the United States. I don't think that's going to be that easy, because the political leadership there will not like it. Though that I think the rank and file, the Canadian people, with just number about 3 to 4 crores, will be more than happy to be with America. Because America, as I told you, is the land of honey. Another thing which he has done is the removal of the illegal immigrants. Now that's a Herculean task. I think there are about more than 1 million refugees, illegal immigrants in the United States. And how going to remove them, at least as far as India is concerned, is going to be a big problem. And we'll have to wait and see what happens. But he's going about it, and I don't know how far he will succeed. Because to remove, say, 11 lakh illegal immigrants is not easy. It's not a joke. Because these immigrants have become part of the American system. They're part of the American economy. And you take this big chunk away, there are a lot of jobs which they were doing, the menial jobs. Who's going to do them? So we'll have to wait and see how Donald Trump goes there. I think it's probably going to be more rhetoric and symbolic, and maybe he could remove a certain number, but obviously he can't remove everybody. So the policy and our foreign policy and Trump is different. He's concentrating on trade. He's concentrating on defense. He's concentrating on uh, increasing the American influence. You can see the refreshing change which is coming in. Probably the embassy in Afghanistan will be open. He will also have an opening to North Korea, and that will break the uh, chains between North Korea and China. Russia is going to have an open, and Russia would be more on the American side. That is true. And he's opening out to India. Forget about the refugees, because there are two different cases, who are there in the illegal immigrants. In America, as far as America is concerned, it's India is a top priority, and we have had the Chief of National Security, Tulsi Gabbard, coming to India. I think the FBI chief is also going to come, and the American President Vance is coming, their defense secretary is coming, so India is top priority. And they wouldn't like India to slip away from their grasp. Because if you go to fight China, you can't fight China without India. The Philippines has openly said that India should be the main member of the Quad to fight China. Let's see what happens. And ultimately, of course, China and India are going to be rivals. There could be a military clash, because China cannot tolerate India as a power, and it will always try its best to wean it away. And that's the problem they're facing. India's rise, they'd like to stop it, and they're cultivating all anti-India forces like Pakistan and anti-India forces in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. So India has got to be on the guard, take a more proactive policy, but that's from the Indian point of view. As far as America is concerned, I think it's on the right track. Let's see what happens further, gentlemen. I think I'll hope you like my video. Please share with your friends and come back for more. In the meanwhile, I'll say goodbye. God bless and Jai Hind.